When police officer Fatima, disguised as a widow, arrived at the prison, she discovered that it was not just a place for punishing criminals, but an organized den of exploitation. The guard, Ahmed, who, as it turned out, was sleeping with a prisoner named Lena, forced her to abandon her dignity. In the prison, the guard raped every female prisoner, spent the night with her, and committed disgraceful acts. When Fatima entered the prison as a prisoner, the same thing happened to her. Before we continue, if you enjoyed this inspiring story of justice and courage, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more touching stories. We also want to know where you are watching us from. Write your city or country in the comments, whether it's Morocco, Egypt, Iraq, or Saudi Arabia. Your opinion inspires us to do better. Continuation of the story. It was around 10:00 p.m. in a luxurious government house in the city. Fatima sat at her desk, surrounded by folders. The lighting was dim, and an oppressive silence reigned. On the table lay a thick file with a large inscription: Secret Reports on Violations in the Women's Prison. Fatima took a deep breath and opened the file. The first page shook her soul. Under the heading Sexual Exploitation, Physical Abuse, and Psychological Torture by Guard Muhammad, there were 2 photos and an audio recording from an anonymous source that deeply disturbed Fatima. This was not just a complaint, but another case. She thought that an official investigation would take time, but the cries of these women could not wait. A few hours later, she made a decision and devised a plan. She decided to go to prison herself, but not in her true form, but disguised as Zainab, a 35-year-old widow falsely accused of murdering her husband. A forged police report and arrest warrant were created. Few officials knew about the plan. 3 days later, a police car drove through the large iron gates of the prison. A woman with a timid appearance emerged from it. There was fear in her eyes and weakness in her gait. She was dressed in torn clothes with a headscarf and a broken bracelet hung from her wrist. This was Officer Fatima, who had now become Zainab. The first night in prison was unbearable. A damp cell, spoiled lentil soup, and a female guard who swore and insulted. Fatima felt every moment, for her mission was to begin here. The next day, a woman quietly approached her and said, "Sister, you're new, don't talk much. If the guard notices you, it's over." This was Layla, who had spent 4 years in prison without trial. Fatima asked her innocently why. Layla cried and replied that women fear the night, and whoever refuses is subjected to beatings or poisoning. That night, Fatima decided to see all the pain with her own eyes. She hid a small camera in a crack in the wall. Her real driver, Ali, was outside. On the 3rd night, Guard Muhammad appeared for the first time. Tall, strong, with eyes burning with lust, and a face reflecting the pride of power, he asked, "Are you new?" Fatima nodded and said, "Zainab." His gaze implied that he would soon lead Zainab down a path where many women had been broken. Fatima made sure the camera was recording everything. Everything went smoothly, but this was only the beginning. That night, she did not sleep. Moans and cries came from all sides, and anger grew in her heart, igniting new energy. She clenched her fist and promised herself not to remain silent anymore. She counted the days, the corrupt individuals in the prison corridors. That night was filled with a strange silence. The wind had died down, and the moans seemed to be trapped within the walls. Fatima, still in the guise of Zainab, sat in the corner of her cell, deep in thought. 3 days had passed, but the horror she had imagined turned out to be far worse. Suddenly, the door opened, and 2 guards entered and said, "Number 114, come with us. The master calls you." Number 114 was Zainab's number, meaning Fatima's. She composed herself and walked out. She was taken to a part of the prison forbidden to ordinary prisoners. There was Guard Muhammad's office, luxurious, with photos on the walls, a bottle of wine on the table, and a comfortable sofa in the corner. It was another world inside the prison. Muhammad, sitting in his armchair, said, "Come, new queen. What's your name?" "Zainab," Fatima replied softly. So softly that the walls did not hear. The guard took her chin, lifted her face, and smiled. "Good. Now your name will be whatever I want to call you." His eyes reflected lust. Fatima lowered her gaze, but inside she was tense. The small camera in her bracelet was recording everything. Muhammad approached to remove her veil, but Fatima suddenly pushed him away and stepped back. With a trembling voice, she said, "I'm scared, sir." He laughed. "This is just the beginning, Zainab. There's no need to be afraid here. You need to get used to it." He pressed a bell. A female guard entered. "Place her in the observation cell under my supervision," he ordered. Fatima was placed in a new cell, slightly larger and cleaner, but with a mesh through which the guard watched her from every side. At 2:00 a.m., the door opened. Layla quietly entered and said, "Zainab, be careful at night. Many women break here." Fatima's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was firm. "Your cries will not be shattered against these walls, Layla, I promise." The next 2 nights were full of cruelty and fear. The guard tried to lure Zainab to him in various ways, sweet words, force, threats. But Fatima, pretending to be frightened and crying, was getting closer to her goal. Outside, the driver Ali walked near the prison every day in a lawyer's suit, ensuring recording, coordinating with the media and high-ranking officials. The 4th night arrived. Muhammad stated clearly, "Tonight is the night of choice. Either you will be mine or I will kill you." The cell door opened, but Fatima was not alone. She had a small device sending a signal to Ali. When Muhammad tried to attack, Fatima activated the device. Ali immediately received the signal and left with the police commissioner, the women's commission, and journalists. In the darkness of the prison night, sounds of approaching lights were heard. Fatima was still in the guise of Zainab, but her eyes burned with the fire of revolution. The darkness of the 3rd night in prison was different. The air was heavy, and there was a silence of conspiracy. Zainab no longer resembled Fatima. She had become an inner storm. Her mission had reached a point of no return. It was around 1 in the morning when a drunk Muhammad left his office and headed towards the observation cell where Zainab was. In his hand, a bottle of wine. In his eyes, lust. In his pocket, the key to the cell. The 2 guards at the door stepped back at his signal. He opened the door. "Don't look for excuses. Today, you will be mine, whether you want to or not," he said. Fatima took 2 steps back, fearfully saying, "I am ready to serve you, sir, but I ask for a little mercy." Muhammad closed the door. There was no one else in the cell. Suddenly, Fatima pressed a hidden button behind her waist. Live recording began. At the same time, Ali began broadcasting the video online. When Muhammad tried to approach, Fatima asked, "First, serve you or tell what I know?" He hesitated and asked, "What do you mean?" Fatima straightened up. Fear disappeared from her face. Instead, fire blazed. "I know that you are not just a guard, but you run an entire criminal network," Fatima began. "You have made Layla, Zahara, and other women slaves of body and soul. Your people smuggle drugs into the prison. You take money from criminals outside, provide them with women, and those who speak out are found dead in the prison well." Muhammad laughed. "What are you going to do? You're just a widow. Who will you tell?" Fatima replied, "I've told the right person. You are now live, and the whole country is seeing your brutal nature and the truth." Muhammad's face paled. He stepped back, but suddenly the door burst open with force. A representative of the Women's Commission, the police commissioner, journalists, and Ali entered. "Muhammad, you are charged with attempted rape, oppression of women, running illegal activities in prison, and other serious crimes," the commissioner announced. Muhammad tried to escape, but the police surrounded him from all sides. The guards who had worked under his direction now stood with their heads bowed. Fatima, having returned to her role as a police officer, cast a final glance at the camera and said, "This is not just the arrest of a guard. This is the defeat of a system that suppressed women's cries for years. Now the voice of justice will resonate in every cell, not fear." A chaotic commotion began in the prison, an investigation into the cases of missing women. What had been hidden in the archives became a hole through which the truth shone. With Muhammad's arrest, an organized criminal network in the prison was exposed. But this was only the beginning. Fatima knew that other faces stood behind this network, some in official uniforms, others in plain clothes, and some in masks. Officer Fatima's identity became known to everyone. The operation shook the entire prison area. Breaking news filled the media. Police officer disguised as a widow uncovered a rape and drug network in prison. But Fatima knew that Muhammad was merely a tool. The real culprit was still hiding behind the scenes, protecting people like Muhammad. After Muhammad's arrest, the prison was searched. They found fake names, false books, drugs, and dozens of photos of missing women. But one thing struck Fatima, a secret diary. In a secret letter hidden in Muhammad's office, it was written, "By order of the master, Layla, the new woman named Zainab, has been transferred to the observation cell. The master said she needs to be broken, like other women." "Who is this master?" Fatima's eyes hardened. She was no longer just a police officer, but a woman seeking revenge for the women who had died within the prison walls. The next day, Fatima held a secret meeting with the Women's Commission and the crime-fighting team. She found out that the master was a respected city leader, a three-time member of the Legislative Council named Abdul Rahman. He had previous accusations, but he always escaped punishment due to lack of evidence. Muhammad was one of his men and ran the prison network under his orders. Fatima now had enough evidence, but the case was very sensitive. An elected representative could not simply be arrested. She devised a new plan, and this time, she was not alone. A special regional task force joined her. The plan was a trap into which the master himself was to fall. At this time, Fatima received a call from a trembling female voice. "My name is Zahara. I am a victim of this network. I know where the master is, but my life is in danger." Fatima took the call seriously. The next day, disguised and without official cars, Fatima went to meet Zahara. Zahara led her to an old farm where Abdul Rahman often appeared and where he held private parties. Fatima saw guard cameras and secret doors. This was not a farm, but a fortress of darkness. Soon, Abdul Rahman learned that Fatima was pursuing him and ordered his men not to leave her alive. She found herself in a dangerous game where her life, her true identity, and her mission were at stake. But her determination was unwavering. She swore that she would not allow another Zainab to appear. The visit to the farm and Zahara's testimony gave Fatima a thread that could uncover the roots of the network. But the game was becoming increasingly dangerous. Abdul Rahman was not only strong, but also experienced. The special group had enough evidence, but every step had to be taken carefully. The slightest mistake could jeopardize the mission and Fatima's life. One evening, as Fatima was planning an operation with the team, a messenger came to them with a package. Inside was a burnt headscarf and a threatening message. "The fire you ignited in our lair will turn you and your mission to ashes. You are no longer just an officer. You are our enemy. You are next." Fatima read the letter, but there was no fear or trembling on her face. Her eyes burned with the resolve of war. The next day, secret information arrived. Abdul Rahman was hosting a private party where 5 girls from the prison would be taken to the farm to be shown to foreign guests. Fatima realized this was her chance. There was no stopping. At 9:00 p.m., Operation Black Night began. Fatima and her team headed towards the farm, but on the bridge, their car was hit by a truck. The driver Ali died on the spot. Fatima was seriously injured, but remained conscious. It was a planned attack. Later, the truck driver confessed that he had received orders from above to stop the officer at all costs. Fatima was immediately taken to the hospital, but the operation could not be left unfinished. As soon as she regained consciousness, through the pain, she said, "Call my comrades, the operation will continue. I will go myself, even on a stretcher." When Fatima left the hospital, her face was covered with white bandages, but her eyes burned with fire. The special group surrounded the farm from all sides. The party with foreign guests, Abdul Rahman, and his men were caught by surprise. At midnight, the doors were breached, gunshots and screams echoed. Abdul Rahman was arrested while attempting to escape on horseback. 5 girls were freed, including Layla, who had previously been declared dead. This was not just a raid, but an explosion of evidence that a woman's fight for justice can shake the foundations of the system. Fatima not only saved the girls from the farm, but also uprooted the network of human traffickers and crimes in prisons throughout the region. But the war was not over. There were other masters like Abdul Rahman hiding in the shadows of power. Fatima's next step was to expose their identities. After the success of Operation Black Night, Officer Fatima's story swept across the country. Every news station and newspaper praised her courage. But Fatima knew the war was not over. Abdul Rahman was just a tool. The real fight was against the mentality that treats women as commodities under the guise of power. After Abdul Rahman's arrest, the trial began. Outside the court, the crowd chanted, "Long live Officer Fatima! Death to rapists! No to crimes protected by politicians." Fatima herself came to court and said, "Honorable court, I want to clarify that our biggest mistake is that we treated criminals as respected leaders. It was they who turned the prison into a den of exploitation, dragging prisoners into a network of rape, human trafficking, and drugs. I asked the court to punish this criminal not only by law, but also by conscience." Silence fell in the courtroom. But, thanks to witnesses, video recordings, and documents, the court sentenced Abdul Rahman to life imprisonment on charges of rape, human trafficking, conspiracy to murder, and corruption. This was not just justice, but a message to the entire system. Abuse of power will no longer be tolerated. The Ministry of Internal Affairs awarded Fatima the Medal of Courage, but she refused the celebration and immediately went to meet the rescued girls, Layla, Zahara, and others in the rehabilitation center. Seeing her, the girls said, "Madam, you have restored our human dignity. You did what even our loved ones could not." Fatima's eyes filled with tears, and she hugged them. "Now you are not just surviving, but starting a new life," she said. A few months later, Fatima was offered the position of chairperson of the National Committee for Women's Safety under the central government. But she politely declined. She knew that her true field was where injustice occurred, where justice was needed. In her last interview, a journalist asked, "Madam, aren't you afraid of these powerful enemies?" Fatima smiled and replied, "If a woman can infiltrate a prison disguised as a widow, then any woman can change the system." With that smile, a new dawn of justice began. Friends, Fatima's story reminds us that justice requires courage and will. Every step towards change changes the world. Share this story with those who need inspiring support. Learn and never despair. After every difficulty comes victory. Work hard, believe in yourself, and teach others. Our goal is not only to transmit knowledge, but also to create positive changes in your life. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your attention. You are not just viewers. You are our family. Stay happy, safe, and with new knowledge. See you soon with new inspiring and energetic stories. Goodbye.